So I want to talk about Yemen, guys. I want to talk about Yemen. Um, I came across a video and it got me to thinking about Yemen, and I was talking to somebody a while back about Yemen, and Yemen is going to be very significant. Is very significant, and also it Yemen shows us that we are in the what's considered end times, right? Like Yemen is very pivotal, and I'll show you why. I'm going to show you why in a minute. And I came across something. I can't shout this dude out right now because I just forgot what his name was. But anyway, I'll come back to that. So, but so I'm going to go over some stuff that I found. Some research stuff that I already knew, but then research that I did on AI when I saw this video this guy did, and especially with everything that's going on in Yemen right now, I think it's really interesting as far as um, you know, end time prophecies. So let's talk about Yemen, and then particularly a couple Bible verses. Stand by for me. So let's talk about the book of Joel. Now, the book of Joel is a probably the shortest book in the Bible. It's a dream that Joel had about the end times, and in it there's an interesting quote in Joel 3:8. And I will sell your sons and daughters into the land of the children of Judah, into the hand of the children of Judah. Sorry, and they will sell them to the Sabeans, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it. And so, what does that mean, right? If you read the book of Joel, it tells you that the punishment of the nations. See, they never tell you when you go to church. They talk about Jesus saves and all this. Jesus saves. They never tell you about the true Bible and then the true and truly what the Bible says. They always take things out of context and then try to obscure or hide what's really written there in the Bible. And so in Joel, it clearly states that the Lord of hosts, who people mistakenly call Jesus Christ, will attack the earth. And when he does attack the earth, he's not coming to save people. He's coming to enslave people and kill people. And he's coming to wage war, as it says in the book of Exodus, Exodus 15. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. And so in Job 3:8, we see him talk about this and on part of the judgment and the war that he's going to wage. But it's interesting because the Sabeans are actually the Yemeni, right? And I don't think I've talked about this before, but this guy inspired me to speak on it. So the Sabeans are actually the ancient Yemenis. And what we find is that today they call them Arabs. Yemenis don't descend from Arabs. Now the Arabs invaded and Arabized Yemen, but what we find is that I was doing some research, and I'll come back to that. What we find is that the Yemenis, particularly in the southern Yemen, descend from Semites. They would be considered Semitic people, um, and in a sense, Israelites from the 12 tribes of Israel, as is written in the Bible. So, um, Queen, and it looks like Queen of Sheba may have descended from the Yemenis, Eritrea, Ethiopia. All those people come from Sabeans, and so let's go over that real quick. Stand by. So this is just some of the stuff I found on as I was doing research on AI. I'm gonna go over it real quick. So I was using Gemini for this one. I really like Gemini. It's like become my favorite AI. And I basically turned it into a Bible scholar database. So when I asked it about the Sabeans, I said, I already knew, but I was just asking the questions. It talked. I pulled up some information and said, who were the Sabeans? The Sabeans were an ancient group of people associated with the kingdom of Sheba, located in southwestern Arabian Peninsula. They were a powerful, wealthy Semitic tribe, Semitic trading state. I'm sorry, they were a state, right? Modern Yemen, a Semitic, right? Semites. So they were considered Semites, right? And they spoke a Semitic language. I mean, in other words, Israel will be considered now a modern Israelite language, right? Um, they flourished for over a millennium, you see, and they had a capital called Marib. Okay, the Sabeans were wealthy traders renowned for their extensive trading networks. Okay, they value commodities like gold, stones, frankincense, myrrh, and spice. All right, and they were heavy into the gold and like diamond trade, stuff like that. And also they like to trade perfume, some fragrances. They were into that kind of thing. So, and they said they were considered tall people, significant stature, and very strong. Right? So, in Job 38 explicitly mentions their involvement in the slave trade. I will sell your sons and daughters into the hands of the people of Judah, and they will sell them to the Sabeans, to a distant nation. This is part of God's judgment against Tyre and Sidon for their actions against Judah. So I'm gonna move through this pretty quickly. You can kind of do your own research if you want. But basically, what it's extrapolating or showing is that the Sabeans in the end times, which is modern Yemen, Ethiopia, Eritrea, these are all Sabean, will be considered Sabeans and Semitic tribes based on research in the Bible. Okay, Queen of Sheba, the famous Queen of Sheba who visited King Solomon, was very likely a Sabean queen, demonstrating their wealth and diplomatic influence. So King Solomon was considered a Semite, but what they don't tell you is that we find here with the AI pulls it out is that Queen of Sheba and the Sabeans, the Yemenis, the Eritreans, and the Ethiopians were also considered Semites. They are basically descended from the same people. The Sabeans, the Eritreans, and the Ethiopians all descend from the Sabeans. And it makes sense. What it says here is the prophecies of subjugation and conversion. Isaiah 45 and 14 prophecies about the eventual subjugation of the Sabeans along with Egyptians, Cushites to Israel, to the Israelites, and their acknowledgement of the God of Israel as the true God also alludes to their conversion. So what do we see here? They were Arabized. The Sabeans, who were Semites and probably believed at and worshipped, and it was part of their culture. They probably was under the Torah, just like the rest of the Semites that descended from the Israelite tribe, but they got invaded and Arabized. They will come back. They will be subjugated in that sense and be brought back into the true knowledge of who they were, and begin to accept that. Right? And so I'm gonna try to move through this pretty quickly. Um, And here it says, I asked it, I think I asked it, who would be modern descendants of the Sabeans theoretically? And it says it's a fascinating, complex question. But here it says, number one, the people of Yemen, especially southern Yemen. You see? So we see that the people of Yemen would be considered the modern Sabeans. Who's fighting Israel and America right now in Europe? Well, that would be the Yemenis. So the Yemenis play a pivotal part in end time prophecy, in case you didn't know. All right? The Yemenis will be playing so we see that now, we see that unfolding where the Yemenis are fighting the synagogue of Satan. They're leading the fight, even though they're the poorest country in the Middle East. And now we see why. Why are they fighting the Arabs? They're so-called people, because they're not actually Arabs. Not especially the ones in southern Yemen. They are Semites. They are Semitic people. They descend from the 12 tribes of Israel. And they're going to be brought back into the fold. You see? That's why you see them now on the world stage. Even though they're the poorest country in the Middle East, all you hear is Yemen, the Houthis, Yemen, the Houthis, right? Ansar Allah. You see? Ansar Allah. The Houthis. You keep hearing about them. Now you know why. Because we in the end times now. This is the end game. You see? And they are the Sabeans. Now, I'm going to say some things. I just wanted to Arabization, right? Over the years, especially in the advent of Islam in the 7th century, Arabic became the dominant language and Islamic culture permeated the region, while the Sabeans themselves spoke a distinct South Semitic language and did not identify as Arabs, right? Let me say that again. The Sabeans themselves did not identify as Arabs. They considered themselves Semite, which means Afro-Asiatic, meaning considered themselves, I guess you could say, African, for better use of terminology, just for expedience sake, right? They considered Semite means Afro-Asiatic, so they considered themselves Afro-Asiatic, not Arab. But they were attacked and then infiltrated, like Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, by Arabs. The same thing happened in Yemen. All right? Yemen experienced integration, you see? But it says the Yemeni gene pool derived from South Arabians in Yemen, and then got when they got conquered, they were mixed in. They were mixed with the Arabs. Here it says the people in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia and Eritrea. There's a significant historical cultural link between South Arabia and the Horn of Africa, particularly Ethiopia and Eritrea. We see these people, that's where they come from, right? So the Eritreans and Ethiopians are ancient Sabeans. There's archaeological evidence of Sabean presence and influence in regions like Tigray, modern Ethiopia, and Eritrea, including inscriptions on temples. Right? Ethio-Semitic languages. The Semitic languages spoken in Ethiopia and Eritrea, like Gaiz, Aramaic, Tigrinya, are part of the Ethio-Semitic branch. Semites. So they would be considered Semites. You see? So Yiddish in Israel today is not Semitic. That is not a Ethio-Semitic language. It does not. It's not an Afro-Asiatic language. Gaiz, Aramaic, Tigrinya, and with the Sabean or the Yemeni spoke is a Semitic language, which has ancient roots connected to South Semite languages. The exact direction and nature of these linguistic migrations are debated. So we won't go too far in that. The Queen of Sheba. Ethiopian tradition and some extent Yemeni tradition strongly links the Queen of Sheba to the Solomonic Solomonic dynasty and the origins of the Ethiopian royal line. This narrative highlights a deep ancient connection, but she didn't really need it because from what we're reading, we see that um, they were Semites. They not necessarily weren't from the royal class of Semites, from the royal bloodline of the Semites, but they were Semites nonetheless. And so, meaning they were from the 12 tribes of Israel. You see, if you were a Semite, that means you're from the 12 tribes of Israel. So you see these, when they talk about Semite, anti-Semite, all of that, that's what that's relating to, right? That's where that Abraham spoke Semitic languages. Abraham would have been considered Isaac, Jacob, Israel would have been considered a Semite. They would have spoke Semitic languages. So these all connected. And so even though within that group there are Semites, like the Judean lines will be considered Semites, there's also the royal bloodline within that. But they all would be considered part of those people, Israelites. You see, 12 out of the 12 bloodlines. It's important to note the relationship isn't necessarily one of direct descent in the same way as the Yemeni connection, but rather a profound historical cultural exchange that led to shared linguistic and cultural elements. Okay? So I want to move through this information kind of quick. Um, so here, I, yes, Joel 3.8 is widely considered to be an end time prophecy or apocalyptic prophecy within its broader context in the book of Joel. Okay? The context of Joel 3, the entire third chapter of Joel, is highly eschatological, meaning it deals with the last things or end times it describes. The restoration of Judah and Jerusalem, God gathering all nations for judgment, right? The punishment for the past injustice against God's people, specifically mentioned as selling of the Israelites into slavery. Do I need to read that again? The punishment of nations for their past injustices against God's people, specifically mentioning their selling of Israelite tribes into slavery. America. Arabs, Europe, you going into slavery. Now, even AI has spoken this, not as, deciphered. I didn't make this up. This is the AI. I'm just reading it. I just processed this with AI and just asked it questions. The punishment of the nations for their past injustices against God's people, specifically mentioning their selling of the Israelites into slavery. There you have it. Joel 3 and 7. You see? Cosmic disturbances, the Lord roaring in the Zion, being a refuge to his people. Jerusalem being holy and dwelling securely forever. Is Jerusalem holy right now? No. Jerusalem being bombed by Iran and overrun by wicked white people from Europe and America, calling themselves Semites. But if you ain't from Yemen, how could you be a Semite if you ain't from Eritrea, Ethiopia, somewhere in Africa, so-called? You see? How could you be a Semite if you from Poland? The day of the Lord, Joel's prophecy centers heavily on the day of the Lord, a recurring theme in the prophets that refers to a future time when God will decisively intervene in human history to judge evil and bring salvation to his people. While some aspects of the day of the Lord might have partial historical fulfillments, its ultimate and complete fulfillment is understood to be in the end times, which is now. That's why you see Yemen so prevalent in the news. You see? Retribution and divine justice. It states that the nations Tyre, Sidon, Philistia sold the children of Judah into slavery and will have their own children sold to the Sabeans. You see? So Yemen, the Sabeans are the Yemenis, the Eritreans, Ethiopians would be considered Sabeans. You're going into slavery if you're not killed in the war. When the Lord, a host, who you call Jesus Christ, comes to the earth, if you're not killed in that war, he's coming to wage war. I've seen this in a dream. When the ships come down, he's going to bomb you with, not bomb you, he's going to shoot blue-green lasers out of the bottom of those ships and destroy your cities immediately. There will be no announcements. I come in peace. I just came to tell you I love you. I have some roses for you. None of that's going to happen. I saw it in a dream. I woke up and I opened it. It was a great noise. And I opened the windows and I looked out and I saw these ships and they were shooting blue-green lasers into the cities, destroying them. That ain't the first time I had a dream like that. So you're going to be immediately attacked when the Lord, you ain't going to have to ask yourself no question like what's going on. You can just look up and you will see the ships lasering the fuck out of your cities. As they should. As they should. No question. Right? So this specific act of judgment is part of the larger final judgment as described in the chapters. Right? Connection to other end-time prophecies. Many scholars see parallels between Joel and other major end-time prophecies in the Bible, such as Revelation 16, the Battle of Armageddon, and the judgment Jesus described in Matthew 25. Of course. Is it apocalyptic? What say ye, AI? Yes. The language and imagery in Joel 3 and throughout much of Joel often lean into the apocalyptic style. You see? So let me fast forward. I'm going to try to hurry up and get through this. So I asked it, theoretically, who would be the descendants of the people that are going into slavery at the hands of the Sabeans in the end times? Right? And it said that it talked about Arabs. And then it said Arabs. It said, theoretically, the descendants of the people who would go into slavery at the hands of the Sabeans in this prophecy will be modern descendants of Lebanon. So Arabs. But then it went on to say not in the Philistines, it's people in Gaza. So anybody in Palestine and people in Lebanon, that area that are not the 12 tribes, are going into slavery. You see, if whoever survives the Israeli and the European onslaught is then going into slavery, unless you're a Semite. You're going to be tested. You're going to be given a DNA test. And then it goes on to say, right? It says, important considerations for descendants of end-time prophecy. Right? It says that all nations that have oppressed or will oppress God's people throughout history and into the end times, right? Their sons and daughters are going into slavery. Well, that would be all the white people in America, Canada, Latin America, Argentina, Brazil, right? Mexico, Cuba, all the white people in Hawaii, and then Australia, and then South Africa, and all the Arabs, and the Indians in India. You see all of those, they call them the untouchables. Those are Semites that they took out of Africa. The Indians, those heathen Indians took out of Africa and sold them into India. And they treat them like shit in India right now, in southern India. Those dark-skinned people. I believe they call them the untouchables. They ancient Semites. The Lord gonna round up the Indians, and they all gonna be sold into Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Yemen. That's gonna be their prison. They're gonna be sold, all moved there and sold into those places. The ones that are not killed in the war. Right? So anyway, so then it ends, it says, given the explicit nature of the prophecy, naming specific historical groups who engaged in the slave trade against Judah The primary theoretical descendants would lean towards the literal and geographical connections. However, in the ultimate end time fulfillment, the principle of divine retribution against all who harm God's people would likely encompass more than just these specific historical lineages. Boom. There you have it. Right? Thank you, AI. There you have it. So, yeah, so I just wanted to go over that, right? Since this guy, he got me thinking about that, and I talked to a friend about that some time ago. And so I'm gonna wrap that, but this is the Joel prophecy, and as you can see, it deals with what is it, the main thing it deals with is Yemen in the end times. See, so you say, how do we know a sign of the times? Well, look at Yemen. You think it's a coincidence that Yemen is in the news and so prevalent right now? You think that's a coincidence? You're stupid. The Yemen are the ancient Sabeans. You see? These are ancient Semitic tribes that descend from the 12 tribes of Israel. What's left of them in Eritrea and Ethiopia and then Yemen. And this is part of the end times. So that's how we know that we in the end times. We can match Yemen up with the news, and we say, okay, this is not when the fuck did you see in the past 50 or 100 years anything going on with Yemen other than them being attacked by Saudi Arabia in the past 10 years and attacked by the U.S. and Europe? You never heard of Yemen until probably 5 years. Most of you, maybe a year ago, never heard of Yemen. So, yeah, so I just wanted to cover that, man. Um, I think it's we are in the end times, and I think that Yemen plays a big part, and then it's going to play a bigger part when the Lord of Hosts shows up, because then the war takes place. You see, so they're about to be destroyed, and the ships are going to crack the sky, and then they're gonna immediately attack with blue green lasers coming out of the bottom of those ships. They're gonna lay waste immediately to all these cities, whether it be, whatever's left after the civil and world wars. Right? They're gonna lay waste to these cities, and their soldiers are gonna touch down on the ground, face to face with you. You will be face to face with the army of God, with the holy soldiers of God. You're gonna be face to face with them. They're gonna shoot. They're gonna be shooting you point blank. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's gonna be like hand to hand combat. That's why it says in the Bible, the Lord says, they said he had a vesture dipped in blood when he showed up and the crowd saw him with his soldiers. They said the Lord of Hosts had a vesture dipped in blood. What does that mean? The vesture is his clothing. And it said he had a vesture dipped in blood, and he had many medals on his jacket, because he was a general in the army. That's what Lord of Hosts means. It means general. And so he had many medals and stripes on his jacket because he was an intelligent, highly decorated general and a soldier. He's an old man, but he was fighting. And it said he had a vesture dipped in blood. And nobody knew his name. See, Jesus Christ is not a name, stupid. It's a title. Like Lord of Hosts. Like Son of Man. And it said nobody knew his name but him and the men that was with him. So if you were to say, hey, Jesus Christ over there, he would look at you like, who the fuck are you talking to? This older man with a sword and a gun, right? Killing people with blood all over his uniform. Would have no idea what you was talking about if you said Jesus Christ to him. Because it said in the Bible, prophecy, nobody knew his name but him and the men that was with him, obviously. The soldiers that was with him. That's the Lord of Hosts. Right? That's what you call Jesus Christ. which just means anointed Messiah. That's all that means. It's a title. It's not anybody's name. You got to get that through your head to get this. So he is going to attack the earth. Come out of those ships after he hits them up. They land. They're going toe to toe with everybody. And he said he shall have a vesture dipped in blood, blood all over his clothes from fighting with you hand-to-hand combat against the armies of America and Europe and South America and Australia, right? And the armies in Africa and the armies in the Middle East. And he gonna lay waste to them, obviously, very easily. They would be no match. He gonna run through their ass. That's why he gonna have blood all over his clothes, because he gonna be dusting them off, right? And so that's the prophecy. And then whoever's left will be rounded up and sent into Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Yemen to the Sabeans. That's the prophecy. You see? They'll be round, but whoever's left after that, he'll send them. He'll have his soldiers gather them up over time. I mean, it's probably not going to happen overnight, right? And over months or whatever the process, he'll be gathering them up. You become POWs, just like, which is not foreign. That's what happened to black people, right? You'll be gathered up and shipped. You won't be you won't be in Europe, and if you are there, you'll be gathered from Europe, right? And taken into all the Europeans will be in different groups that are non-Semites who, as it says in Joel, assisted and participated in the slavery of the descendants of the 12 tribes, right? Will be sent into Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Yemen, into these slave colonies, and you'll become a slave. You'll be enslaved if you're not dead, and that's where you'll go. You won't be in Europe or Australia or South Africa or in Kansas anymore. That's the truth of the Bible, unfortunately for you. And there is no repentance. There is no getting out of it. There's no getting out of it at this point. It's signed, sealed, and delivered. It's yours. Right? That's what you gotta deal with in the Bible, the real Bible, anyway. So that's all I got for y'all today. I appreciate y'all rocking with me. You are rocking with the best. And subscribe, shudder, and all that good stuff. And I'll see y'all in the next one.